Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roach, your host for today's podcast. Alan Moore is enjoying his sabbatical. I'm excited to have XYPN member Alex Yeager, owner of Everlong Financial, a fee-only firm in Austin, Texas, on the show with me today. Alex started his career out of college at Vanguard, where he gained invaluable experience working directly with clients and their investments, and using the support of Vanguard to achieve his CFP marks. After spending a handful of years there, he did start feeling an itch to work more intimately with clients in a comprehensive manner, and as such, he pivoted. He moved to Texas and began working at a small boutique RIA. It was only after a handful of years there when he decided to break away and start his own independent financial planning firm. Alex was an early adopter of the monthly subscription model. He was one of XYPN's first 75 members and in many ways is a shining example of what real financial planning can look like. Instead of having a specific niche, Alex is focused on painting a really clear psychographic persona of his ideal clients. Alex specializes in the personal relationship side of the service and loves that he can pick up a phone call with a client and know everything he needs to know to be able to speak with them. Alex doesn't have any intentions on rapidly expanding his business. Rather, he wants to continue to lead by example to his clients as he creates a business model that works for him and his growing family. Alex talked a lot about what it's like to personally start a firm and the challenges he faced with his own perfectionism and anxiety. Although Alex says he would have worried less had he known where he'd be in 5 years, Alex reminds our listeners how important it is to create a community of supporters and advocates who are in your corner when times get hard. If you're interested in building a practice that meaningfully serves your life and your clients, then you won't want to miss today's episode.
XY Planning Network's annual benchmarking survey is out. Are you curious about the average number of clients XYPN members get in their first year, or how successful niches really are? To answer these burning questions and more, we've again enlisted a professional research firm to complete our annual benchmarking study. Get your copy hot off the press and discover vital statistics such as the median advisor revenue by years in practice and sources of firm growth, from referrals to blogging, social media, and more. Head over to xyplanningnetwork.com/study to purchase your copy today.
You can find any of the resources we mentioned during this episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/233. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when you need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here is my interview with Alex Yeager. Hey, Alex. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you, Maddie? Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us. I've been really looking forward to this interview, and I want to dive right in. But to be fair to our listeners, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself and your firm and what you've built so far?
Sure. So I built my firm starting back in 2014, but prior to that, I've been having something to do with investments since 2004. I live in Austin, Texas. I moved here back in 2009, right in the throes of the financial crisis. And so we can talk a little bit about that and how that impacted my transition here. I'm married. I have 2 small children. I work my practice out of my house. I focus primarily on mid-level career individuals, professionals. I don't have a niche or a niche per se, but I do have a number of clients that are attorneys, some engineers. Being Austin, you see a lot of computer engineers here in town. And I've been doing this on my own as Everlong Financial now for the last 5 years and going strong and really enjoying the people that I'm working with and the plans that I'm developing for clients.
Awesome. And are you running the firm just by yourself still?
I am. I made the conscientious decision back in 2014 when I started that I wanted to have more control of the direction of my firm, the type of clients that I'm working with, the type of plans that I'm delivering, based upon what my experience was with the prior firm that I was with. I really found that there was a need for someone to work with these mid-level professionals because life was getting pretty complex at that point in time for a lot of them with families, trying to make decisions. Do I want to stay at this job or do I want to continue on? What size house do I buy? So it was a very conscientious decision for me that I wanted to have a lot of control in the direction of my firm. And at this point, it's just me. So I wear the compliance hat, I wear the investment management hat, I wear the financial planning hat, and all the stresses and worries that come along with that. I bear it all.
Yes, yes, yes. It's amazing the number of hats you have to wear as a business owner on top of being a good financial planner. So in that regard, was this your first go at being a business owner?
It was. So when I graduated from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill back in 2004, I immediately started working at the Vanguard Group in their Charlotte office. And so I was a W-2 employee. I did that for about 5 years, started working with what they call their client service group, moved up to working with individuals who were beneficiaries of assets. So helping with the transition, helping those individuals understand what assets they were inheriting. And then I moved to what Vanguard calls their flagship service, which is clients with at least $1 million or sometimes $5 million and above that hold those assets with Vanguard. And I enjoyed that work quite a bit. But I started to have the taste that I wanted to do something different. I wanted to get away from the corporate perspective and have a little bit more of small business perspective. So I took the leap. I moved from North Carolina down to Austin. At the time, my fiance was finishing up law school in Houston. We were living apart for about 4 years at the time. And I thought that's enough time for us being apart. Let's, make this change as well. But it was both professional and personal change. Moved to Austin. I worked with a small boutique firm for about 5 years, primarily doing investment management. Really got the understanding of working one-on-one with clients, understanding everything from, what their goals are, what their passions are, the complexities of life beyond just the investments that I focused on when I was with Vanguard. And it was at that point that I really decided, okay, well, I know that I want to build my own business. I want to build my own practice. Let me leverage what I learned at Vanguard. Let me leverage what I learned at this small boutique firm. And let me go ahead and then start to target the exact demographic of client that I want to focus on.
Love it. And before we really get into that, I don't know what an experience of an advisor is at Vanguard. I mean, and I don't know many people that went from college into Vanguard. What kind of training programs or education did they provide you with to be able to stay there for the number of years that you did?
So it was fantastic, the program that they offered. When I graduated from Carolina, I was a psychology major. So I had one finance education experience class for my training. My parents, my father growing up sold term life insurance for the most part, and my mother was always a banker. So we always talked about finance. So there was always that interest in my personal life there. But when I graduated college and went to Vanguard, I had no experience. And that's how they like, new associates coming in, because they like to help them cut their teeth and really understand that diversification matters, that costs matter, that building a sound portfolio really does matter. And the idea of looking at the long term for your financial picture, not trying to worry about the things you can't control, but control things that you can. And so from that aspect, I went through their training program. At the time, it was you get your Series 6 and your Series 63 license. That allows you to talk with clients on the phone. And as I continued to grow, they have different career paths that you can follow. And one of those was start to take the CFP classes.
Wow.
Yeah. And now, from my understanding, speaking with some colleagues and peers that still work at Vanguard, that's even more so at the forefront. They really want to have a lot of financial education. The market demands it now. And so I started studying for my CFP, where they would reimburse me for the costs. I purposely took a 1-year track to study at the time it was 6 courses. Now there's a 7th course, but I finished all 6 courses within a 1-year period and took the exam and passed. And that's how I earned the credentials. But it really was Vanguard and the ongoing support and education that they instill in all of their associates that really helped me understand the value of what we can do and what we can offer to clients. And at one point, I actually started training other new associates within the Vanguard system, a lot of the different programs or services or how to communicate with clients. So it was a really great learning experience that I could leverage in future years, both with the boutique firm and with my practice now.
Yeah, what a valuable experience for you to walk away from your first job in the industry with the CFP credentials. I know so many members struggle to be out of industry working on their CFP. I remember trying to do the same thing. Had I had a professional environment that supported that endeavor, who knows where folks could go. So when you were at the boutique firm, were they supportive of your interest in going out on your own, or was that a really hard conversation to have?
Well, I was with them for about 5 years. And when I started with their practice, there was 12 associates at the firm. My primary role and responsibility was I was one of the portfolio managers. So reviewing the accounts, placing the trades, making sure the allocations were in line, having those conversations with clients. And the bug of I want to do more financial planning started coming in. And I could have expanded my working with clients to that area of field. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I really wanted to work with a certain demographic of clients, the younger professionals, really help them make some financially sound decisions on the forefront. And I started having that itch about 4.5 years in, where I knew that it was going to be time to make that change. And so, as you do as a financial planner, you start to think about what the future 6 months to a year looks like from your own personal cash flow standpoint for the family. You start to think about how long is the runway that you expect to grow your business. You have this idea that, it won't take that long, but you're also leveraging the growth that at the time a 25-year firm had already built in the community. And so it was a lot easier to develop more client leads and more financial planning clients and investment management clients, because you could leverage and say, well, I'm part of such and such group. When you start on your own, they say, well, who is Everlong Financial? And it's me. And so you have to take all that into mind and consideration. When I did start having the conversation with the prior firm, it was a difficult conversation. As I mentioned, there was 12 of us when I started. When I left, there were, I believe, 22 of us, a pretty tight-knit group of individuals. And I really enjoyed working with everyone. But again, I had the desire to do something a little bit differently. So they weren't happy. We can definitely put that out there. But I think that I did have the support from them in that they understood my desire to make this change and to make this transition to a different type of practice. I think that it was partly that I wasn't going to go after the same clients and I wasn't going to cannibalize any of their business. One thing that was interesting is that for me in particular, I didn't have a non-compete or non-solicitation agreement. And that was something that in the period that I was starting to look to make my move, they realized that we wanted to make sure that all of their associates had those agreements. And at the time, I knew that I was going to make a change, and I didn't want to sign anything that would potentially hinder clients deciding to leave the practice and come with me. I didn't want them to have any kind of impediment that way. And so that made conversations a bit difficult as well. But I reassured them that from my perspective, my goal wasn't to build my new practice or my new firm on the backs of what they had already done. That if clients wanted to come with me, that was a client decision, and I didn't feel like I should be penalized for that. But it wasn't going to be day one, I'm cold calling or warm calling, if you will, all of my former clients and saying, hey, guess what? I'm going to cut your fee by such and such if you want to come with me. It's not something that I could live with myself with, if you will. And so it was a challenge to leave, but we did have a long runway, about 30 days or 45 days for me to start to transition everything to new associates and whatnot. And I think at the end that now looking back on it 5 years, we're all friends. And actually I ran into one of the previous advisors just this last summer with his son. And we could have a conversation and joke and be, friendly about it. But at the time, it was definitely more of a challenge making that transition.
Did you end up having any clients follow you to Everlong?
Immediately, no. If I have to put a number on it, within the year, I think I had 2 or 3 clients decide to make a change.
Okay.
And that was from a client base that I worked with personally of about 130, 140 clients. So again, it wasn't that, the firm did fantastic work for these clients. And so it wasn't that I was going to offer something immensely different or a better product. It was that they enjoyed working with me from a personality standpoint, from how we communicated and how we connected and how I understood their situation. And so those are the clients that decided to make the transition over with me.
Yeah. A lot of our listeners are probably sitting in their cars, driving to their jobs right now, thinking about and daydreaming what it would be like to finally hang out their own shingle and start their own RIA. Tell us about what it was like to kind of vision board Everlong. What was most exciting about what you were going to offer? Did you really focus in on the marketing, or was it just the client relationships, or what really drove this for you? And what was it like during the first few months you started putting pen to paper about designing your ideal firm?
Well, that's a great question because the vision and the reality did not align whatsoever.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. The vision is that you think that you can go out and you can start to find clients. You have this great service that you want to offer, this great personality, if you will, your level of education, your expertise, and people don't come calling nearly as quickly as you think. And the runway that I gave myself was I said, give it 2 years. Get to a point to where you can get your compensation back to where you feel comfortable, where you can provide for the family. Get it to a point to where you don't feel underwhelmed with the work or overwhelmed with the work, but use that as kind of your period to ramp up things. Things happened for me personally along the way that changed that. So I left in 2014. My wife and I had our first child, Clark, in February of 2016. 4 months after we had Clark, we found out we were pregnant with Madeline. And so she was born in March of 2017. So there were some personal things that derailed the vision plan that I had. And from a professional standpoint in building the business, my main focus was let's get all the basics settled. Let's figure out how I want to plan, how I want to communicate with clients. What type of product, if you will, do I want to offer from how many times do we want to meet a year? What type of investment conversations do I want to have? What kind of strategy do I want to implement for clients? The marketing aspect, as you mentioned, for me, I didn't market. I didn't put that out there. And so it was trying to figure out, okay, well, how do I start to grow this business with all these other issues that are happening and understanding that it's going to take a little bit more time than I thought in actuality. And I think this is something that a lot of breakaway advisors find out when they start their own RIA is that you do have a lot of unexpected things that happen. And it's also extremely lonely because it's just you now. You don't have anyone that you can really ping ideas off of or communicate with or say, well, how should we do this? How should we do this is how should I do this? And you're kind of making mistakes and fumbling along as you go. So it was a challenge. I did find resources out there that helped. So I formed with advisors from California and one from Tennessee, one from Missouri. We formed a mastermind group of 6 of us. We called ourselves 6 Cents just to give us some motivation. But we would meet at least on a weekly basis, talk about kind of where we all were with our development of the business, what our goals were, how we could improve, how we could leverage each other, because we realize and make this realization that we're not competing for the same clients, that it is a pretty large pool of people out there that need our help. And if you start to work on a certain area of your business, your practice that you want to help clients, you're not cannibalizing anyone else's business or eating up any of their practice. So we would meet that way and we talked for about 1.5 years. And it was really great to have that communication, that support. As we continued to develop and our business started growing, we started to figure out that we didn't need to meet as frequently. So we started to reduce those meetings and whatnot. And we found other resources then that were helping. But it was the vision and the practice itself they were not aligned. And I had to be okay with that. I think that's the one thing I've learned throughout this whole thing is that, you can plan as much as you want. And I should have known this as a planner. You can plan as much as you want, but there's going to be something the next day that's going to derail that plan completely. And the important part of forming your business and your practice is making those mistakes, but learning from them and continuing to push forward and don't letting those mistakes trip you up or pull you back. And that's probably what I learned the most. The most exciting thing about starting the practice is getting to meet new clients, I love hearing other people's stories. It's one of the reasons why this podcast is so great is that, I come from a world of working with Vanguard, then I worked for the boutique firm, then I started my own practice. And I think, well, everyone's had that perspective and everyone's had that experience. And the reality is we all come at this from different angles. And that's what I love about being a planner is trying to figure out from other people's perspectives as far as jobs they do. How do you live? How do you get by? What excites you about your life? And that then fuels me so that I can, invest more into the plan and to the working relationship with these clients.
It's amazing that so many of our advisors are people. And that's the reason that they're in this industry to start. It's the reason that they want to keep working. And it really, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that it's a lonely endeavor to do this, and how quickly a people person who derives energy from working with people and hearing their stories finds themselves alone in their second bedroom trying to run a firm. And for the first time in a long time, feel and look around and realize, oh my gosh, I don't have a community there. And at XYPN, we really do harp on those mastermind groups. And I've heard a number of members say, well, why would I ever share what I'm building? That would be, that they would be in competition with me. But then very quickly through membership, they realize that we all take an abundance mentality here, and that it's actually so pivotal to have a group of people to be able to celebrate successes with, mourn losses with, and to hold you accountable as you continue to build. And I'm so glad to hear that was so important during the first part of your experience. Do you feel like you have a community now of some colleagues that you can bounce ideas off of?
I do. So as I mentioned, our group, we broke up after a couple of years, as all great groups do. And I'm still in communication with a lot of these individuals. A lot of them are XYPN members. That's how we found each other. I found other networks to continue fostering, conversation, exchange of ideas and whatnot. So whether it's, through my local FPA, whether it's through NAPFA, whether it's through keeping communication with other advisors here in town, you almost feel like now with technology that you don't have to only look locally. There's also groups. I just joined a group, the Advisor Growth Community, which is right now about 50 advisors that we are spread across the country. We get together at least once a week to have conversations and help each other grow. Again, with the same idea that we're trying to better ourselves both personally and in our profession for our firms. But we all come at this from completely different angles. So there's some members of the group that may be brokers, there's some that sell insurance, there's some that do fee-only financial advising. And it's really great to have these different ideas all exchanged in a safe community to be able to have those conversations. So I think that helps quite a bit as far as keeping motivated. One thing that I think is interesting is I used to be the person that, I talk quite a bit. While at the office, I actually was the person that liked to get in, put my head down, do the work, and go home and be with my wife and my kids. Now, when I left the office, I thought to myself, oh, great. Now I don't have to worry about people coming in and pulling apart 5 or 10 minutes of my time. And now I can focus on the work. And I quickly learned that I actually enjoyed having those moments of interruption in my day. And that when you're on your own, whether you're in your own office or when you're in your house, it's not that you get distracted with other things, but you do get lonely. And you realize that the only person that you have, if you're married or if you have great friends, the only people you have are those individuals who are used to a completely different experience with you. They're not used to professional you wanting to talk about your practice or the concerns or the issues that you're dealing with. They also don't understand any of that. And so I would warn individuals going to do it on their own is to make sure you do have a good network with your spouse, a good network with your family, a good network with your friends, because those are also the individuals that will help support you along the way. Because there are some low points. There are some really great high points, but there are low points and there are struggles that if you don't have a partner who is understanding of what you're going through, and truth be told, nobody really understands except for those of us that go through it. But you can't dump all of this baggage on them because they don't know how to respond to that. And it puts a real strain and a struggle on yourselves. And so I learned pretty quickly that my wife, Elizabeth, didn't want to hear any of that. And so I pulled back and again, found the mastermind groups who they were more than willing to hear this because you know what? They were going through the same stuff.
Absolutely. And thanks for being so open about that. Not everyone shares kind of the real personal side of starting a firm. And, we've said it before that the 2 things you need to be able to do this is experience, I guess 3 things, experience, money in the bank, and a supportive spouse. And I think that's so, so true. But could you talk a little bit more about, what it's like to have children in the middle of building a firm? I can't tell you. I would say more than 50% of our advisors do it in the first 5 years. But how'd you make it work with your wife? How did staying home with the kids and rearing them and all that stuff work as you had these competing responsibilities?
Yeah. So again, life happens. We decided to take life on full force.
Mm-hmm.
And so we knew for a while that we wanted to have our first child. And when he came along, it was great because I knew at that point in time that I wanted to really be there for him as far as being a parent. I wanted to make those first connections with him. And so my wife took time off of work. She's an attorney. She took time off of work and for maternity leave. And then after she went back to work, I took 3 months myself. And it was myself and Clark that we were spending time together. And I would try to do the business, but the biggest focus for me was him on a daily basis. And the clients that I had, I think at that time I probably had 8 financial planning, investment management type clients. I explained to them that this is very important to me. I always tell my clients that let's talk about your dreams, let's talk about your goals, and let's build that bridge to make that happen. And I had the conversation with everyone to say, listen, I'm not doing myself justice if I don't follow my own, prescription. So all of my clients understood. I was still readily available, but I wasn't as available as I would be, or I didn't take on new clients during that period of time. Because again, when you're raising a child, you have all these new responsibilities and you have all this, you don't know how to even deal with it at first. And so it's so important that I focused on him. When we found out we were pregnant with my daughter, it was the same thing. I wanted to have the same period of time with her as well. And so it was a challenge. It was also at that point in time, so she would have been in 2017, so about 3 years into the practice. I had more than just 8 clients. I had clients that, were coming on. I think I had about 15 clients all in at that point in time. And a little bit of a different change, but the same message was explained to those clients. And I'm very open. I'm very honest with my clients. I'm a very open and honest person. And if they had an issue or a concern with that, then I would thank them for their time. I wish them the best of luck. I find a new advisor. But, the benefit of owning and running my own firm is that I do get to choose who I hire and fire, and for good or for worse. And they all understood it. And I haven't lost a client with that type of approach. I think it's kind of hard, though. How do you fault someone if they say, listen, I'm trying to live my dream as well. I'm going to take a little bit of time off. So maybe I had a little bit of benefit that way. But no, I think it's the type of clients that I chose really understood, my decision that way.
How relatable and how wonderful to have someone as an example, as an advisor, be able to really live what they're preaching. And I think it's very, very important. Alan is on a sabbatical right now. It's incredibly important that he shows the staff and the people that work with him and even our members that what we say is what we do. And if we're advocating for people to take time off and spend time with their family and loved ones and develop interests and passions outside of work, then that is something that we have to do as an advisor in front of our clients. Tell me a little bit about your decision to not find a specific niche. It sounds like you really have kind of a type of client that you're looking for, but have you developed a specialty or something that you kind of hang your hat on? Or is it parents? Is it anything in particular that you've developed? And was there an intention behind not niching up specifically with one type of client?
Yeah, well, I'll answer that one first. There's not been a specific reason why I haven't decided that I want to work with a certain client. In my former experience has been you work with kind of everyone and you are a jack of all trades. When I started Everlong, my idea behind it was I have peers who are mid-30s. They are attorneys. They're earning, attorneys, doctors, engineers. They're earning really decent salaries. They might have some debt from student loans. They might have some complexity, first child, no one going into college just yet. They're in the middle of their career. So they're trying to decide, okay, well, is this where I want to hang my hat for the long term or not? And I would talk with them and they'd say, well, I'd really like some advice. Can you help me with this? And I say, well, the firm that I work with, they have minimums and I don't have the capability to offer advice unless you would meet those minimums. I really didn't have anyone else that I could point them to. At this point in time, we think back 5 years ago now, Sophia and the rest of the gang, even XY Planning Network was just starting to get up and going. And so there wasn't this idea that there were younger advisors out there who are willing to understand the complexities of someone who are in their mid-30s, Generation X, trying to figure out and navigate the financial world. Am I saving enough? Am I doing enough? Am I saving the right way? And so that's the type of client that I really wanted to work with. And that's who I've honed in on. So most of my clients are anywhere from mid 30s to early 50s. They're middle of career, getting closer to retirement. They are trying to make sure that they have everything buttoned up as far as the types of 401k investments, the savings, the health savings accounts. Talk about the type of medical plans and medical insurance coverage that clients are selecting from their employee benefits. Really just making sure that I can give them back time so they can focus on what's most important to them. And for the most part, my clients are young families, so it's their children. They want to, Austin is a very outdoorsy city, so they want to be outdoors. They want to experience, they want to enjoy all the benefits that Austin has to offer. And they don't want to worry about the planning aspect or am I doing enough or not. A lot of times I would see them, especially I'm reminded of one client in particular that signed on with me, who, when we started working together, they had a lot of really great things taken care of, but there were some loose ends that needed to be tied up. And one of them was that they were just investing everything in cash because they didn't know how to invest any of their investments. They didn't know what appropriate investment was as far as which mutual fund or stock or ETF or whatever the case. And so that's the type of client that I've really honed in on, is the clients that they want to do best for their family. They're in a position where they have a great savings capacity. They're not outspending or outliving their income that they're making, but they need that third party person to help them optimize their current situation. And that's where I've found a great opportunity.
I love hearing about members' kind of psychographic niches of what are the attitudes, what are the types of clients that they want to work with, and really seeing success with that and drawing clients in, as opposed to saying, I'm just going to work with New York firefighters, that instead you're looking for folks that embody an attitude and a perspective about money. And I've really looked forward to this interview with you, Alex, because you've been with us at XYPN for so many years. And XYPN's only been around for 5.5, but you've been with us for almost 5.
Yeah.
And you were probably one of the first 60 or so members that ever believed in what XYPN was building. And I know many of our members now, as we've surpassed 1,000 members, hope one day they can be in your position. And I want to ask you about how you've gotten to this position. How have you made it 4.5 years in? And I know that you have a really good handle on your KPIs, your key performance indicators, the way you track your data and your churn and your retention with your clients. Can you talk to the listeners a bit about kind of the intentionality that you brought into your space with this and how it's paid off?
Yeah, so I probably don't have as much intentionality that I probably should have, or that others have at times. As I mentioned, there's a colleague of mine at the prior firm that I worked with who had a list of sayings and things that you would follow, and one of them was "Make mistakes, you'll learn." So that's kind of how it's been my intentionality to figure things out. But 5 years in, I have the benefit I can leverage 10 years of prior experience and then 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been fantastic in that I don't have to worry about trying to figure out, how I'm going to talk with clients, how I'm going to develop my investment strategy. That's been stuff that I figured out along the way. What I've spent the last couple of years figuring out is, how do I want to deliver the information? How do I want to communicate? How do I want to make sure that clients that I'm working with are actually executing the recommendations and following through? And so to that extent, I've been very selective with the clients that I take on. When I hear other advisors, they say, I have 60, 70 clients that I'm working with. As of today, I'm working with 28 families. And that's very purposeful because I want to make sure that I know as much as I can about my clients so that when they call me at any point in time, I don't think to myself, well, who is this? What's going on in their life? Where did we last leave our conversation? I want to make sure that I do hone in on their specifics, if you will. And so, where do I see myself right now as far as where I've grown? I've progressed not as quickly as I wanted to, but at 28 clients, I feel really comfortable with that number. I'm not looking to double within the next 2 years and then bring on, another associate, put my name on side a building and, have this. I would love to maybe in the future be able to do that. But at this point in time in my career, I really like knowing everything about my clients and being able to help them when they need the help. I'm a one of three sons from my parents. I'm a
Mm.
firstborn, so I'm a very much
Mm.
perfectionist, detail-oriented,
Mhm.
OCD type individual. And so again, I like that control. I like knowing everything about my clients, and by having such a selective group of clients that I'm working with, that's really allowed me to satisfy my needs, but then also deliver the best product that I can deliver to my clients.
I love that. I hear so many members as they approach 4, 5, 6 years in the business that they really are becoming more of the face of the firm, or they're going to become more involved in the media and the marketing exposure versus servicing the clients. And it's so wonderful that there is this group of advisors at XY and out there that are really dedicated to creating and scaling a firm that allows them to service the way they want to service. And so it really sounds like you have created a service model to your clients that's sticky, that's attractive, and that's personal. Would you mind sharing a bit about kind of what your typical service model looks like? How do you, I mean, it sounds like you work with your clients kind of through the tenure of their lives and through a number of years with them. What does it look like? Are they talking to you every month? Are they shooting emails every week?
Sometimes daily. No, the typical client and the type of service that I offer is I do offer comprehensive financial planning. So
Mm.
everything from, the nuts and bolts, blocking and tackling, cash flow analysis, all the way up to, do we have the right estate plan in place? Have we looked at the tax situation? Have we dug so deep to look at the benefits that they're receiving from their employers? But then I also offer investment management. So I tie in the aspect of constructing portfolios, both accounts that are held at my custodian that I can work with on a limited power basis, or at their 401k, and bringing everything in together. That's how I work best with clients. And as far as the delivery of that, at the prior firms we worked where you do a single plan. And I was with the plans where we would do the 120, 130 page books. You would hold it up to your peers and say, well, that's about heavy enough, and let's deliver this plan. And the reality is those clients would never look at that. They'd bring in the plan the next year and it wouldn't have been opened. There's dust all over it. And so I made the realization pretty quickly, as with the group, is that it really is this idea that it is a process, that it needs to be an ongoing conversation, that things are changing at all times in clients' lives. And so I've developed my process to be one that I try to communicate with my clients at least semi-annually, where we would get
Mm.
together, we sit down, and we have, an hour and a half. Oftentimes it goes on 2-hour long meeting, but we talk about everything from, did you take care of the actions that we talked about doing? And let's look at what the next 6 months or the next, quarter looks like, so that we can set some tasks and you can start working on those items. I initially wanted to meet with my clients each quarter. I
Mm.
very quickly realized that they did not want to meet with me each quarter, that they had their own
Interesting.
lives, and that they didn't need to be annoyed by Alex, the pestilent fly flying around all the time saying, hey, you owe me this, keep sending emails. And so I've designed this model to say, I'm always reachable. You can give me a call. We can have an email. If you want to come and meet with me, let's do it. If you want to grab a lunch and just, talk about what's going on in your personal life, let's do it. But I at least want to sit down formally with you and make sure that we are tackling all the goals and all of the tasks that we talk about, because you told me these are important to you. These are your values. And if you're not actually completing those tasks, then we need to have some sort of accountability. And that
Mm.
semi-annual meeting, if you will, that I do with clients, that gives us the accountability, at least gives us the opportunity to also check in and see if things have changed in our life to where now it actually changes the direction of the plan a little bit. And so far, clients have been very responsive to that. It's interesting now that I'm not asking clients to come meet with me more often, they're actually reaching out to me more often.
Wow.
So it's kind of a counter and something that was unexpected that way. But that's been the benefit of doing an ongoing service model, is that you are a constant part of your clients' lives, and that as things change, as things come up, they're interested in buying a business. Okay, well, let's talk about that. They're interested in getting a new car. Okay, well, let's talk about that. I mean, no job is too big, right? Nothing is too small. Let's talk about everything, because it all has an impact on your financial story that you're trying to tell.
Absolutely. And the role of the advisor so often is just to remind us of what our ultimate goals were and where we want to go, because it's so easy for us to get distracted as humans and say, "Ooh, this is a new shiny thing. I want to focus on that." And to have a third party, unbiased advisor in our corners to remind us, well, actually, we talked a lot about you wanting to do X, and to remind us and kind of pull us back is where I really see so much of the value come. And it sounds like where you derive a lot of your energy from is having those really meaningful accountability conversations with your clients.
Yeah. And I would also say that sometimes when you have those conversations, it may not necessarily be, let's pull you back to where we were with the original plan.
Mhm.
It's more of, okay, this is something new, right?
Mhm.
Let's not ignore this. Should we incorporate this into the plan and change direction, or should we look back? And I think it's having that conversation that a lot of my clients appreciate, because so often in our personal lives, we can think of, oh, I wish I just had someone here just as a sounding board, just to talk this out.
Mhm.
And I think my clients now appreciate that I serve in that capacity as much as possible, even to the times where I have conversations with clients that we're not talking necessarily about finances, but we're having other conversations of, well, what would you think in this situation? Because I know them so well, and I
Mhm.
know what they are thinking, and I can at least tease out from them the conversation a little bit more to make sure that they are
Mm.
making a very informed decision.
Mhm. Absolutely. Are you charging most of your clients the subscription model just kind of as income every month, or are you billing on their assets?
So I do a combination of both. What I've found is that I can manage assets on an AUM type model just fine, but I can't co- conscientiously, I can't build a appropriate allocation without knowing the other aspects of the
Mm.
comprehensive financial plan part of it. So with all new clients, I steer them towards doing a full financial plan. But I
Mm.
understand also that a lot of my clients, when they come to me, they might not have assets to actually manage, but they will in time. And so what I do is to encourage clients to bring assets to my management, because they don't want to deal with that. It'd be great if I give them advice and then they go and implement it, but the reality is they're not going to do that. So to help them with that, I use my quarterly or my monthly financial planning fee as a credit against investment management up to a certain point. And so I've had clients really appreciate that, because then they think, okay, well, I have $10,000 or $20,000 or $150,000. For the most part, I would direct them, okay, well, look at a target date retirement fund and let's talk when they get to about 300 or 400,000. Now with this, I can offer them and say, okay, well, you are saving quite a bit, and within 3 years' time, you're going to have three or $400,000. But we need to make sure that you're making smart decisions along the way. And because you want me to help with the financial planning aspect of it, I can also help with the investment management aspect of it. So I tie both of those in together. And then there's always a fee for my clients for financial planning. I always
Mm.
put an anchor on that. I think that's always important. But then beyond a certain threshold, then a portion of their assets would be charged an AUM pricing model.
Wonderful. Let's go back to that kind of the multiple hats that you have to wear that you brought up at the start of this interview.
Yeah.
I know that you've recently had a second visit from the Texas state auditors.
Yep.
And tell me about both kind of your compliance program. How scary is it actually? And how scary was it actually to have them in your office?
Yeah. So Texas, from my experience and from talking with other advisors, they come in to do state inspections about every 4 years. And so I got licensed with Texas in October of 2014, October of 2015, actually, right after, I believe, the first XY planning conference. When I was leaving,
Yes.
I got a call in Charlotte, and
Oh.
they said, hey, we want to come in next week to look at your books. I was scared to death.
Mm. Hmm.
And they came in, and it was a very nice hour-long conversation talking about a lot of stuff that we're talking about today, but then also talking about the compliance aspect of everything. How are you tracking notes you're taking with clients?
Mm.
How are you tracking suitability requirements for clients? How are you delivering the plans? Do you have all the agreements? Everything that you need to maintain for your state license or SEC registration. But the first go round was a nice hour-long conversation. They came back and didn't find anything that was glaring. My actual name is Alexander, and I go by Alex. And so they wanted to make sure I had both names registered just in case, because I could have a son
Wow.
named Alex instead of Alexander. But it was, other than that, it was pretty seamless. I just got the call a couple weeks ago and just had the inspection last week.
Hmm.
And it was a bit of a different take. It was a 4-hour ordeal, same two people from Texas, but they were different individuals that came in this time. But they asked many more questions as far as on the suitability aspect of how you're delivering recommendations to clients, the asset allocation type concerns. There was a lot of questions on the agreements, the fee models. Not too much. I occasionally hear people have concerns from other states as far as the monthly subscription type model or the XYPN type approach. Nothing really with that whatsoever. I think it's some of the states are really starting to understand that. I think as long as you can evidence that you are delivering service to those clients over the course of that time, that you're not just a gym that has the equipment, and if someone comes in, great. If they don't, you're still getting paid. And so that wasn't really a concern. The cybersecurity was one question or two, just
Wow.
trying to make sure that I'm doing as much due diligence. I think a lot of the states, they realize that smaller advisors, if you are state registered, there could be quite a cost that's involved with doing your cybersecurity type program, as with everything else when it's just you. But they didn't have many concerns with, the idea that I have all of my files encrypted on a cloud server, that I don't have, a file cabinet that I have to lock each and every day. I haven't gotten the results back from it, but in talking with the inspectors during the day, they didn't have any concerns other than, a couple of things that what's changed with state law requirements. But it's the most nerve-wracking when you're thinking about preparing for it, because it's like an IRS audit. They can ask you anything and you have to provide it because that's kind of part of what you sign up for. And truth be told, I'm all for it because I want them to weed out the bad players. Financial practice in the industry, we don't really have, we're not really, we don't have a great history. They don't make movies about, with the Wolf of Wall Street or any of these other movies that we have experienced with a Boiler Room, because, that doesn't happen. It does. And so you want them to be able to find those bad players, weed them out so that us good guys and girls can continue on to serve, the masses in the best capacity that we can. So I'm all for the state coming in and doing their inspection. And they're very fair. They're people just like us. It's not as if they're trying to find something on you. They're trying to help improve your business. And they're trying to help, the community, and they're trying to help the consumer. And that's what we should want and what we should hope that they strive for and we strive for.
More evidence of the abundance mentality, Alex. That's wonderful. Great attitude towards it. I do have a question about how do you manage your compliance department to be able to feel comfortable going into an audit? I know that you said you don't have a lock and key on your files because they're all virtual, but I know that we offer Smart RIA as a compliance technology at XYPN. And one of the to-dos that we have for advisors to do every month, and they delete it if it's not applicable, but it's to make sure your doors have locks on them and to make sure your cabinets do too. And I always found that very humorous, but you have to do those things. And quite honestly, it's incredibly important to preserve the integrity of our industry. What does it look like behind the scenes to run a compliance program in a state registered RIA at a firm your size?
Yeah. And that's a great question, because it can really be what you want to make it, especially when it's just yourself as a solo practitioner, right? So if you have other associates you're having to monitor, there's a lot more involved when you're looking at their emails, you're looking at their account statements, you're collecting all of that information, you're validating trades that they may place in portfolios or recommendations that they're providing to clients. When it's just yourself, I'd say it's easier, but it's also, you can just say, well, I'll get to that later, and push down the compliance and push down the requirements and the checks and whatnot. And then you look up and it's been 6 months down the road and you haven't reviewed to make sure you have all of your agreements in place. You haven't reviewed to make sure that the investment policy statements you have in place have been updated appropriately, or you haven't tracked everything right. And so the concerns with that is that, do you have a system in place to help you navigate that? And so I do subscribe to the Smart RIA. It's been a fantastic system to really help keep me on track, because for the longest part, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a firstborn. I'm OCD as as anyone can be. And so I scan everything. I have notes on everything. I have electronic folders for everything because storage of data is free. And that's all well and good, but I always needed a repository of someplace just to keep myself on track with that. And so Smart RIA pinging me each month or every 2 weeks, or I even have it set up to where it'll ping me on a quarterly basis just to make sure I'm reviewing everything, that everything's in place, that I'm updating the compliance manual for myself. But because I know the state will ask for it, you need to do that. But it's been a very fantastic system to be able to track that. Compliance it's not fun, but it's a necessary evil. And we should do it to make sure that everything is in place. Because again, when the state comes in, they're going to want to see all that anyway. But it's not as challenging as you would think. I mean, when I look back on the last 5 years, to think of what was going to happen for me over that 5 year period, would I have continued on? Sure. But to tell Alex 5 years ago, don't worry, keep with it, it'll all get better. Alex 5 years ago was a nervous wreck. And Alex of today is, it's okay. We can keep pushing. You can make changes, and you can keep improving. You can make these mistakes, and you can learn from them. And so compliance has been one of those things where, if you don't do everything on the monthly or quarterly basis that you need to, you can go ahead and do some adjustments when you need to over the course of time. But it's part of the process that if you don't like looking at yourself under a microscope, then you probably should hire someone else to look at the microscope at you. You're still the one responsible for it, but it can be as big or as small as you want it to be.
Absolutely. So if it's not compliance that keeps you up at night, what does keep you up at night?
Yeah, besides my 2-year-old daughter, it's
Right.
the idea of it's this idea of complacency. I want to continue to push myself as much as I can. So whether that means, am I offering the most current, up-to-date recommendations and perspective on financial planning for my clients? Am I offering the best services for my clients? Is my model appropriate for my clients? I don't want to get to a point where I think, well, I'm at 28 clients. I wanted to get to 35. I'm good, and just let it be. I'm not worrying about the things I can't control. I'm not worrying about the markets. I'm not worrying about, what the state of Texas is going to find on me in a couple of weeks, and they send something in. I'll fix that. That's stuff I can control. What I worry about, though, is a lot of times, again, it's this idea that, am I doing enough? Am I pushing enough? Are my clients getting enough value? I mean, you've talked a number of times on the podcast, and Alan as well, the idea of this imposter syndrome. Is my value really worth what I'm charging these clients? And what I can say, when you're in 5 years, and you've been doing this now for, I've been over 15 years of doing this, is that it completely is. That this is information that we're not taught when we're growing up through school. Our parents very seldom talk about finances, and the level of detail that you can really offer, and the trajectory of someone's life that you can change by having conversations and having impact. We'll all figure it out in time. But my goal is to try to minimize those mistakes, so that what someone looks like at 50 versus, what they looked like, what they could have done from 35 to 50 versus what they could have done with me from 35 to 50 is going to be drastically different. And that's what actually keeps me going, is that knowing that I'm having a valuable impact on clients' lives, and hopefully for the better.
So impressive. So impressive. I can hear the passion in your voice, and that really must bleed through to the relationships with your clients. But going back to your point about wanting to stay or not remain complacent, what kind of, if anything, continuing education are you doing? Are you engaged in your CFP? So what's next? How do you stay relevant?
Yeah, so I read a lot. There's a lot of good bloggers and a lot of bad bloggers out there. I pretty much follow a lot of. There's this new up-and-comer, Michael Kitces is pretty good, who writes very well. Ben Carlson I follow a lot of, and the Ritholtz guys. As far as from an educational standpoint, I love getting CEs. At this point, I'm at least 30 hours over my 30-hour requirement for CFP. For NAPFA, I'm close to 15 hours over my requirement at this point, which is 60 hours every 2 years. So I do take a lot of CFPs, or CEs rather, to maintain my CFP. I know quite a bit about taxes in the tax planning software and the work that I do. I have material to start earning my enrolled agent designation. I haven't gone that route just yet, but that's probably what's next for me. Not that I'm going to look to offer doing taxes for my clients, but just having more credentials to substantiate that piece of the educational pie, if you will.
Yeah. Awesome. Continuing education is always a big conversation. There's whether it's niche specific that you start kind of going down the Heather Jarvis student loan route, or maybe the college capstone planning to do college planning, general. And I've heard a lot about the EA as both a service offering to clients and a value add to them, but also just a great continuing education opportunity. So kudos to you for staying up on it. If you could have changed something over the past 5 years, if you had made a mistake that you can think back to, or something, although you have already referenced that mistakes help you learn, would you have changed anything? Would you have done something faster or differently?
I think if I would have changed anything, it would be not to spin my wheels on certain concerns. When I started the practice, when I started the firm, when I started to make changes. So everything from with the last mastermind group, we would talk about our pricing model all the time. Are we priced appropriately for clients? And I would spin my wheels and just have draft after draft of, well, if I have a client that comes in with this, would they subscribe to it this way or do this? And I think looking back at what I would do is just implement a change and move forward. Because there's so many aspects of the business. There's so many aspects of your clients' lives that you're trying to focus on, that if you focus on one thing too much or you don't make a change and implement it, you can really hold yourself back. So that would be the one thing that I would say to myself is, it's not going to be perfect. Get out of your firstborn type mentality. Just make a decision and move on. So that would be what I would tell myself.
Awesome. And would that advice change if I were to ask you, what advice would you give to someone out there that's listening today, thinking about either starting their firm or maybe joining XYPN as an existing advisor? What piece of advice would you give them?
Well, I would say to someone who's even thinking about making this change that you're already halfway there. And so go for it, because the reality is if it doesn't work, you can go out and get a job and do something else, right? That you only go around once, and take those risks, take those challenges. This was a conversation that my wife and I had when I first started looking at stepping away was, what if I fail? What if no one comes with me? What if I'm just not seen as competent as an advisor, or they don't like the name of my practice, or whatever the case may be? What do I do then? And she says, well, then we'll figure it out. When you don't like the situation that you're in, change it. And you have that control. And I think for me, that would be my advice. Now, you can't just go out and do it on a whim. There's a real benefit to making incremental changes to slowly get yourself to a point to where you are ready to make that change. But don't wait because you think you're going to fail. That's, you've already failed if that's the case. Make the change, push forward. And if you do fail, well, pivot, change your direction. There's no one that's going to look down on you for that. You made the chance. You took the chance. You did it. So
yep.
Go.
We're always our worst enemies, I would say, against ourselves.
Completely.
Well, Alex, this has been a total pleasure to have this conversation with you. I'm so honored to have known you over these years and for you to have been part of XYPN as we've grown. And I know and trust that your clients are so very lucky to work with you and your colleagues as well. But thank you for everything you've done for this profession and for them. Any final words from you, Alex?
No, I don't think so, Maddie. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I think, again, if you're thinking about making a change, just do it. Just go for it. I think that you'll find that in time, you'll look back and think, that's what I was worried about? Nah, I shouldn't have been. I have more things to worry about now.
You heard that from Alex first.
Just do it. That's right.
Awesome, Alex. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a wonderful and safe rest of their day. Thank you so much.
XY Planning Network's annual benchmarking survey is out. Are you curious about the average number of clients XYPN members get in their first year, or how successful niches really are? To answer these burning questions and more, we've again enlisted a professional research firm to complete our annual benchmarking study. Get your copy hot off the press and discover vital statistics such as the median advisor revenue by years in practice and sources of firm growth, from referrals to blogging, social media, and more. Head over to xyplanningNetwork.com/study to purchase your copy today.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningNetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with Alan Moore and Kitsis, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningNetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 333 844 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.